Hey YouTube, welcome back to Along for the Ride. We're here at a client's house working on their deck project with them. We've upgraded it from pressure treated to composite, and today we're putting in a railing. So I thought I'd bring you along to see how that goes. We've got some other work we need to do underneath here. So we've given them a little more length to the deck, simply to accommodate the length of the 20-foot composite. There's no sense cutting it off. And we did that by adding in this A-frame and this beam structure here. So it's a little bit past what you'd normally do for extending past a beam, but it's a small deck and a small span, so I think it'll work fine. They were okay with it, and then we got it legged in. So what we need to do is add some through bolts through this area here to support it. So right now it's just screwed, and we want to make sure that is secure. So that's what our task is now. Well, that definitely wasn't going anywhere before, but it's certainly not going anywhere now. The other thing we want to do on this deck is we want to reinforce it. We found when we were pulling it apart that we were actually pulling it away from the house. They've got a bolt here, but this bolt just goes into the brick. And that was probably okay 30 years ago when that was code, but it's no longer code and it should be legged into the house. We have access to this area in the basement, about 11 feet that way. So we're gonna put some leg bolts right through the floor system. We've already got it marked out. We've been inside and measured so we don't hit a joist. So that's what we're gonna work on right now. As can sometimes happen when you're measuring, maybe you don't end up quite where you wanted to go, using the wood drill to get through the inside rim joist. It wasn't letting loose, it kept grabbing wood, so I knew I was into something. There's a joist right here. I've just switched my distances a bit, I guess, because I'm trying to work around these joists, which was, again, is something that happens when you're working around existing structure. So I'm gonna have to drill just over here a little bit. That'll get me past the joist and we'll be good to go. Well, this isn't going quite as smoothly as I had hoped, and it always seems to be the case when you're working in odd places. But I've got a carriage bolt that on the other side doesn't want to seem to tighten. The threads on it are all broken up. And I'm into hole number 3 at the other end. I think this one's good, went all the way through. It's in a different joist section, so we're good there. But see if I can't replace this carriage bolt and get this buttoned up so we can get back to the railing and back on the ride. So now that that's buttoned up, we can get back to doing our railing. When you're installing aluminum railing, it's always best to start with your 2 endmost posts, because you really don't have a choice as to where they can go. You want to make sure that they get legged into the bottom here and into the joist structure. Even though I've got a solid block under here that I can bolt them to, I want to keep them to the outside of the deck as much as possible so I don't lose deck space. So this is a jig I've made up for the 4 holes, so we'll use that to get them drilled in. And we'll place this one, then place the one way down at that end, and then we'll spread out the 3 in the middle equally and see how they work out for spacing. Remember all that math that you never thought you'd use again? Well, it's coming to play in right now. So the distance between this post here and the post down at the far end there is 242.5 inches. And we've got 3 posts in between that distance, and they are 2 1/4 themselves. So if we take that off of there, we're down to 235 3/4 inches. We're trying to figure out the spacing between the posts here. So we take that off, 235 3/4. We divide that magic number by 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. 4 spaces. I think I only did 3. Good thing we're measuring twice, cutting once. I'm gonna have to redo the math. Leave it to the math teacher to have difficulty with the math. We're back here and I've redid the math. So when we take that 235 3/4 and divide it by 4, because 4 is the magic number, we get 59 inches. So 59 inches between posts. All right, so that's our magic number. Now, before we use that number, we want to make sure it's going to work out for our spindles as well. The one thing I believe you can't do enough of when you're doing building is planning. And sometimes planning on paper works, but sometimes you need to flip over and switch to planning in real life. So I spent a lot of time working with an uncle who oftentimes would draw his patterns out on the floor in full size so that we could see what was going on. So that's kind of what I've laid out here. So I got my starting post here, and I got my other post here, 59 inches apart from each other. And then I've kind of figured out what I'm going to do spacing wise, right? So I got to start with a space, and then I have a spindle, and then I have my fuller inch spacer. And at this end, I'm going to end with a spacer, spindle, and then that same space. So I'm trying to equalize this space from here to match this space over here. We can use this 5.5 inch distance for these two pieces to figure out how many spacers we're going to have in there. So I'm going to take 59 inches, and if I just divide it by 5.5, I actually get 10.72 or so, and that 7.2 is like 4 inches left over. That 4 inches is the magic number, and that's the size of our spacer. So I got a spacer at that end, spacer at this end, and the distance between those two spindles is 51 inches. And lo and behold, if you take 5.5 and multiply it by 9 and add 1.5 inches, you get 51 inches. So I'm going to work to get these posts installed and get some railing, top rail and bottom rail in, so the homeowners can put the rest of the spindles in. I'll get them started because they're doing some of the work themselves to save themselves some money, which is totally fine by me. And if you want to see how it turns out, hit the subscribe button and click that notification bell, and that way the next time this is posted, you'll be able to see what the deck's turning out like. Until then, this is Greg Sinti for Along for the Ride, and thanks for coming along.